So what tech do I actually use every day and why? I'm going to cover the laptop, desktop PC, and phone that I currently use. Now, full disclosure, none of this video is sponsored, but some of the tech was sent to me for free. So I'll mention throughout the video what was provided to me and what I bought with my own money. Alright, let's start out with laptops, as this is something that I review mostly on the channel. Now, I need to note that when it comes to laptops for my own personal use, I only use laptops when I'm traveling, and I use them for 4K video editing. And basically, the reason for that is it's easier to take one of these machines than a full-on desktop PC internationally to an event like CES or Computex. Apart from events like that, generally I'm always at home, so I'm always in front of my desktop PC, which we'll get to later. For the last few years, I've been using Gigabyte's Aero 15X, and fortunately this one was actually provided to me by Gigabyte. Now, what actually happened was I did contact them asking if they had any deals or anything, because I wanted to actually buy one of these for myself. But after I sent that email, they were fine with just giving me the 15X, so I've been using it ever since. My 15X has an 8th gen 6-core i7 with GTX 1070 Max-Q graphics, and it's held up really well for me over the years, though the specs are starting to get a little old for 4K 60fps video editing. Seriously, if you take a closer look at this thing, you can see it's covered in scratches and dents from all my traveling, so it's definitely seen some use. Now, a few months ago, after I reviewed the newer Aero 17, Gigabyte actually let me keep it. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to say no to the latest model with 8-core 11th gen processor and RTX 3080 graphics. That's just too perfect for what I do. Yeah, the 17-inch model is a little bigger than the 15-inch OLED model that I would have preferred, but because this is on the thinner side for a 17-inch laptop, I can still fit it in my camera bag that's designed for 15-inch laptops. And well, beggars can't be choosers. When it's working well, the Aero 17 destroys my desktop PC when it comes to video editing. I mean, the specs are like 4 years newer than my desktop, and the screen looks great. The only reason I haven't just fully swapped to this laptop compared to my desktop for video editing is for stability reasons. Now, I can game on this thing for hours on end with absolutely no problems at all. I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla at 4K high settings and it's been working perfectly fine. But then when I crack open software like Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Premiere, it won't be too long before I start getting some blue screens. And the errors all seem to point to graphics problems. Now, considering I can play a game on the discrete graphics for hours without any problems, I'm guessing it's when the iGPU and dGPU swap between each other when using the software like Photoshop and Premiere. Because otherwise it's perfectly fine. So that is an active issue that I've found with my unit, though I suspect it is probably only related to my specific machine. And the reason for that is because that is a pretty serious issue when it comes to a laptop that's designed for content creation. And honestly, if it was more widespread, I expect I would have heard more about it from other people by now. But right now, as far as I can tell, I'm the only one that's having this issue. I am a little disappointed because it does mean that I probably won't actually be able to use this for video editing on the go. If I'm in another country and I'm staying up late to publish some videos, the last thing I want is an inconsistent machine that's just going to blue screen, regardless of how powerful it is. Fortunately, there isn't a whole lot of travel going on at the moment, so I won't be taking this to CES, as I won't be attending in person. But I still will be covering a lot of new laptops in early January, so make sure you're subscribed for all that content. Apart from that, the only thing I don't like about the Aero 17 is that the secondary key functions aren't fully lit up by the backlight. That still annoys me even to this day, but apart from that, it is a solid machine. Hey, Editing Jared here, and I just wanted to say that in the last few days since doing that video, there was an update to the Intel graphics driver, and after applying that to the laptop, it seems that the problems are fixed. I mean, I was using Photoshop for an hour solid and it was completely stable. So right now I'm cautiously optimistic that the problem's been fixed, but I'll update in a pinned comment or something in time if there are any further problems. But right now, the Aero 17 is working good. Alright, so given I use my desktop PC way more than the laptops, let's get into that next. Now, everything in this PC that I'm currently using was purchased with my own money in late 2017, with the exception of the current graphics card, which is a review unit from Nvidia. I originally built the PC with a GTX 1080 about 4 years ago, but I ended up sticking an RTX 3080 in it because I wanted to play Assassin's Creed at 4K max settings, and that did work very well. And this is going to sound like such a first world problem, but the problem I actually had with the RTX 3080 was that I needed to constantly take it out to benchmark to make other content with, and it was just too much of a hassle to keep taking it out of my main PC. So what I ended up doing is instead putting the newer RTX 3070 Ti in, as the specs between the 3080 and 3070 Ti honestly aren't all that different. I can't say that I've noticed a difference since the downgrade. Anyway, the PC was built with 4K video editing in mind, which is why I went with a 16-core Threadripper 1950X GTX right as it launched in the second half of 2017. And while it was a huge upgrade over the quad-core i7-950 that I'd been using since 2010, it hasn't been smooth sailing either. You think for someone that has access to so much tech, they'd have a laptop and PC that actually worked. Again, don't get me wrong, both are definitely high spec, but yeah, there are just silly issues I've got with both. So with the Threadripper PC, I've just had a lot of stability issues over time that I think are just related to first gen Ryzen. So I actually have to run my 64 gigs of memory at DDR4 2133 for stability reasons. I've found disabling 8 of the 16 cores to also give me better stability. And in the last few months, the 10 gigabit network card that came with my Asus motherboard has actually died, so I'm down to gigabit speed. And given I edit all of my videos off of a NAS, that does actually slow me down quite a bit. I'm not going to cover the NAS in detail here, but if you do want more info, I've got a dedicated video there. Realistically, I probably should have upgraded to something like the 32-core Threadripper 3970X when it came out 2 years ago. But yeah, that is a couple of years old now, and I was hoping there would be new Threadripper by now, but there still isn't, so I'm still waiting. Right now, I'm just going to wait and see what news comes at CES next year in January, and then I'll decide what I'm doing from there, because I definitely do need an upgrade. For the screens, I'm using a 32-inch 4K BenQ as the primary monitor, though I am looking to upgrade for something that's better for content creation, because as I mentioned, even the Aero 17 laptop screen is way better. Otherwise, to the left of that, I've got a vertical 27-inch 1440p ViewSonic Elite monitor that I basically use just for Discord. And let me tell you, 165Hz plus G-Sync equals some very smooth Discord scrolling. Anyway, both monitors are basically just leftovers from reviews that the companies didn't want back, so I've just been using them ever since. Now, don't get me wrong, that ViewSonic monitor is actually quite good, and I'll probably keep that, but for the primary monitor that I use for content creation, I definitely want something that's got better color accuracy. Oh, and it's also 4K 60Hz, and I do some gaming, so it would be good to have a high refresh 32-inch 4K monitor. The problem is there just aren't a whole lot of those available yet, so right now I'm just waiting for a good monitor to come around. Alright, let's discuss phones next. Right now I'm using the Google Pixel 6 Pro, and full disclosure, this was sent to me. But before the 6 Pro, I was using the Pixel 3 XL, which I did buy with my own money. Honestly, I wasn't planning on upgrading anytime soon, so I hadn't been paying any attention to phones. So when I got the email asking if I wanted to check out the 6 Pro, I started looking at the specs and I was getting pretty excited. And look, it is definitely a nice upgrade compared to my older 3 XL, though it's not one that I would say is essential by any means. Like I said, when I was using the 3 XL, I didn't feel the need to upgrade. It was handling everything perfectly fine. But that said, there's no denying that the 6 Pro is definitely nicer. I've been using the 6 Pro since it launched in late October, though I'm still not used to the fingerprint scanner under the screen. I much prefer the back one on the Pixel 3. I also usually just stick with the default Google cases, and the one on the 3 XL kind of has this carpet-like finish, is what I like to call it. I wasn't really a fan of it for the last few years, but now that I've used the newer case on the 6 Pro, I kind of like the carpet, because the one on the 6 Pro just gets kind of dirty looking. But yeah, both of those things are definitely personal preference issues. And the reason why I use cases is both of these phones are just way too slippery for me, as they're basically all glass, and I don't want to do a Linus and just drop them. Anyway, what I really like most about the 6 Pro is the bigger screen, and that it doesn't have the gigantic notch up the top. And of course, the newer camera improvements are definitely welcome, given I take a lot of photo and video for social media. It did take a bit of time for me to get used to the 6 Pro, because it feels a bit heavier compared to the 3 XL, but yeah, I think I'm adjusted to it now, and overall I definitely do like the 6 Pro more than the older 3 XL. Alright, so the next thing that I briefly wanted to mention is this ring. I've been wearing it for about 2 years now, so it's in all my videos, and some of you guys do ask about it in the comments. So it's an Oura ring, and I'm kind of glad I'm not wearing it on my middle finger right now. Basically what it does is it tracks things like my sleep, exercise, and heart rate. So it's got a battery in there, and it connects to the phone app with Bluetooth. I find it useful for tracking my workouts, but what originally drew me to it was the sleep tracking, because I wanted to try and make some changes to my sleep to stay more productive so I can pump out more of these videos. Honestly, it's hard to say if it actually changed anything about my life, but I do like seeing my workouts and having all that data tracked. And the first thing I do every day when I wake up is check how last night's sleep was. The only thing I really don't like about this is the battery lasts for maybe like 3 or 4 days. I kind of expected, I guess, because it is a small ring. I get there's only so much they can fit in it, but what's super annoying is that if the battery does run out overnight when you're asleep, you lose all the data that you had the day previously. It doesn't just save it to the ring. It would be way better if the data actually saved to the ring, and then when you go to sync it next when it's got charge, all the data was still there that it did record. Now, it is worth mentioning that this is the older Generation 2 model, and they did just launch the Gen 3 model, and I did actually buy that too. It's currently in the mail and should be here soon. Again, not sponsored or anything, it's just a product that I personally enjoy. And I wanted to get the new features. I can't tell you what they are right now, but yeah, when I read them, I was like, oh, that sounds better than this one, so I upgraded. So that's all the tech that I regularly use. If you want to see which gaming laptops were the best this year, then check out one of these videos next, as honestly, that's probably more useful to most to you guys compared to either of these two laptops, which are more for creators. So I'll see you over in one of those videos next.